Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Hour podcast. I'm here with Steve, who is the CEO of Rapid Start Apps Global, and has a lot of interesting things to say. I've done quite a bit of research on you, Steve, so I'm quite a fan. So I'm excited to ask these questions for my curiosity as well as the audience listening. So I guess to start things off, if you could give yourself a quick introduction and also a background in Rapid Start Apps and why you started the company in the first place.
Sure, Howden. Happy to be here. Um, so I am CEO of what is now known as Rapid Start Global. We
Right.
recently went through a name change. It used to be ForceWorks. It's still the same corporation, but we renamed because our Rapid Start apps have grown quite popular and a much better name recognition. So we thought we
Hmm.
would align the company name with the name of the apps. It's kind of the cart pulling the horse in this case.
Yeah.
But so we have two organizations within one. One is Rapstart Global, which is a services organization, SI services, working with Dynamics customers and a lot of our own Rapid Apps customers to extend and customize. And then we have Rapid Apps, which is simply the apps that anybody can buy, use, customize, any partner, anyone can use. The original idea for the apps came about in about around 2014. So we've been at this for a while. We came over to Microsoft from Salesforce back in around 2011, and we've been with Salesforce since they launched.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the things we noticed after moving to Microsoft was that they suffered a lot of similar challenges Salesforce does with smaller customers. What we would consider the SMB market, and I know there's lots of different definitions of what that actually is, but it certainly isn't enterprise. And all of these apps were really built for enterprise. That's where the money is. That's what Salesforce is targeting. That's what Microsoft is targeting. So these apps had become just too complicated for a typical SMB customer to have success with. They would get frustrated. They couldn't get any adoption. Uh, they're spending a lot of money. And so we recognized this back in 2014 and thought, what if we were to create a solution that sat on top of Dynamics and just hid everything? Let's just make this thing simple. Let's just distill it down to the stuff that an SMB needs, hide all the crap they don't, and see if they like that. And actually, they liked it very much. They were buying Dynamics at full price and then paying additional money for our app to go on top to reduce the features by 2/3, which is kind of ironic. So
Yeah.
that kind of told me how badly that segment just wants something that's simple enough to use to get in and get the job done.
Yeah.
And that led to really the deeper focus on the whole philosophy of the apps. Is let's make something that does just what's needed, no more, no less. They can always customize to do more if they want to. Let's make it super simple to understand, intuitive, so that people aren't lost, that they don't need a bunch of training to use it. If they do, let's bake in, some training resources, videos right inside the app so people don't get lost. Really just focus on getting people to use the apps, which isn't something that either Salesforce or Microsoft has spent any energy on. And just kind of assume, yeah, that's your problem.
Yeah.
So that was the impetus of the apps. We recently moved, well, when they launched the Power Platform, I guess not so recently now, we moved off the top of the Dynamics apps and just rebuilt our same thing on the Power Platform. So now we can run on much less expensive licenses, which is good for those users. And it's just taken off. Since then we've got well over 100,000 users of our apps. We added field service and project management again for the same reasons. Looking at the options that are out there, they're all targeting enterprise and too complex, particularly for Microsoft. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we are today, um, and how we got here.
Super interesting. And yeah, I've done a little bit of background research on your history, and I was always enthralled because even some of the organizations I freelance for, I'll see an environment called Rapid Start, and I'm like, oh. That's awesome. So it really goes to show the impact you're making within the community, and we'll kind of get onto your role within the community, which I think has been profound. I haven't been in the community so long, but I've definitely seen your name around quite often. So we'll definitely get into that. On my research, I saw, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but you've never had a job before. You kind of always started within entrepreneurship. So something I'm kind of battling with and struggling to understand myself, and I'm sure people at home listening to this who want to make that jump from, full-time slash contracting work into a business is validation. And people speak about validation so much nowadays because we've all heard the story of people putting hours and hours and hours, months, years even into a project, getting it out there, and then no one wants it. Why I fell in love with the Power Platform in general was because a lot of that time is mitigated. You're coding less, it's quicker to build those solutions. But I guess my question is, what are some of the lessons around validation have you learned from the beginning of your journey, and would you say you're wiser about now with Rapid Start Global?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I've never been employed.
Mm,
I was an entrepreneur ever since when I was 18. My father gave me the business that he had, which was in a completely different industry, and I've been an entrepreneur ever since. So
mm,
I'm missing the perspective of moving from full-time employment or contract work over to entrepreneur. Just
yeah,
I, it, I don't understand it very well because I've never actually lived that particular thing. This is just all I've ever done, and it seems logical to me.
yeah,
I never understood why I would want to work for anyone else.
mm,
Uh, I think there's back in the day, because I've been around a lot longer than you, there was some job security for people, raising a family, to be working at a larger company with benefits, but there's no job security anymore. People get laid
mm,
off left, right, and sideways for any reason or no reason at all. So to me, the only true security is, being your own boss. I mean,
mm,
I'm not going to fire myself, and I'm completely responsible for my success or failure. And if I succeed, I will benefit as opposed to people I'm working for. And if I fail, well, then I'm going to suffer. But I probably would be fired if I was working for someone for failing also. So I don't
yeah,
see any upside for me. But I will say there's a mindset that you have to have that a lot of folks that I see go hang up a shingle and try and do something just they don't have. They really don't. They're not brave enough. Uh, to me, it doesn't take any bravery. It just seems natural to me. But if you haven't been doing it, it's going to require some bravery that a lot of folks don't have. Particularly if you've got a young family, then you've got your significant others going to be nervous. Everybody's going to be nervous about you suddenly hanging up a shingle and hoping you can pay rent next month.
yeah,
Uh, I would say that if you can't sell, because there's lots of people that can code, and exceptional coders could build magnificent stuff, but they can't sell. They're just not. They're not salespeople. You're going to struggle, on your own. If you can sell, I mean, that's really the most important uh, talent, I think, of an entrepreneur is the ability to go to someone and convince them to buy your stuff. If you're not able to do that, nothing else matters. And I can bring in people to develop and code, and I can do those sorts of things. But if you're like a hardcore developer and you go hang up a shingle and you can't sell, you're not going to get very far. In that case, you kind of need to partner with someone who can. I've
mm,
always been of the opinion that if there's no one on the team that can sell, there's no business. You don't have a business if there's no one on the team that can sell. And that
yeah,
doesn't mean calling, a former employer and asking if you could do contract work. That's not selling. If you can't go out and generate net new customers on a consistent basis, you're just not going to be an entrepreneur for very long.
yeah. Yeah, and I heard you on Griffin's podcast, and if my audience hasn't seen that podcast, I highly recommend you check it out. Very well produced, and you mentioned kind of the importance of selling, and I really loved your perspective on the sense of people see selling as an icky thing, like I think Griffin used the example of like a used car salesman, but you kind of have this school of thought of selling is just helping people realize what they need, because no one's going to buy something they don't need. And if they do buy something they don't need, chances are they're going to come back and return it. And I really love that perspective. I'm an avid reader and I like podcasts and media and those sorts of things. So I guess my question for you is, are there any specific books you recommend people picking up to introduce them to sales, to build that skill, build that confidence? Any videos or media or anything that they can use to kind of build that skill of selling? Or would your answer just be start selling to learn that skill?
I've been doing this for so long, and I think I just had kind of a natural bullshit artist, whatever you want to call it, in the blood from the beginning of being able to convince people to see things that I wanted them to see. I mean, to me, selling is not about the car salesman, doing the hard press, the hard sell. It's really about painting a picture in front of the customer that the customer is going to like, and then getting them to agree to buy that picture. So I haven't done much reading in many, many years. It's just not my strong suit. I do remember one of the first things my father sent me to before I took over the business was actually Dale Carnegie, which I think is still around. This was a program way back, because we're going back a ways now to when I was 18, but I mean, this was a program about public speaking and confidence and some of this stuff. And I mean, I was already probably the cockiest guy in the program, but I came out, maybe just a little bit more cocky and or at least more confident that I was on the right spot. So I don't know if that program's still around or if there are similar programs, but I would say anybody who, lacks confidence, because if you lack confidence, you can't sell. You have to be confident or you'll never sell. So that's one thing, is anything you can do to try and build confidence. Public speaking is a good way to do it, and a lot of us in the industry have opportunities to go speak at events. Some people say it's one of the most terrifying things, statistically, of anybody, is speaking in front of a group. And if you can get over that, which again is easy to do if you're speaking about something you have confidence in your knowledge of. But once you get over that, and you'll just see the confidence building, and confidence is a key component to selling. And nobody buys anything from somebody who's fumbling around and they can tell isn't confident. They buy from confident people that are. If I can convince someone, it's because I'm confident. If I'm not, I'll never convince them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of what happens internally is going to show externally with whatever you're doing. So, yeah, Dale Carnegie, I read one of his, one of the most popular books out there, How to Win Friends and Influence People, by him, and absolutely game changing for me. I read that when I was 18 and I was working in a warehouse, and I remember I was leading a team in the warehouse, and I was going home and reading it, coming back and trying to apply things in a situation so different to software and technology, but the principles in that book can be applied anywhere. So Dale Carnegie's course,
It's
yeah,
all fundamental. It's not like hocus pocus or some tricky, body language reading or mind, manipulation. It's just the fundamentals that a lot of people just don't, haven't ever been exposed to, on that side. Especially, I would say,
absolutely.
with a lot of the folks in our tech community
Mm.
who if they're on the development or technical side, really would never have had a reason. They went, computer sciences came out, been working behind a computer, they wouldn't have had a reason to develop those skills. But if they're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, you're going to need those skills, or you're going to be right back behind a computer in somebody else's business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of the influencers I follow, they prioritize those fundamentals, sales, marketing, just all in all being a genuine and good person. So I love your mantras, and I love the words you put out there on that. And we mentioned your role in the community before we started recording. I've seen you've had a few talks with Charles Lamana. You're quite prominent in the community. You've spoken quite a few times as well. So I guess, where do you see your role in the community, and how did the community work start within the business application / power platform area?
I'm selfish. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm looking out for my business and trying to grow my business and do what I can for myself. And so a lot of this is just self-interest. But in the process of pursuing my self-interest, there's other people that seem to have similar interest. And, I don't have any problem telling, again, I'm confident. I don't have any problem telling people what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. We come up with new business models, services, subscription, for example. I've probably talked to 50 partners about that model, how it works and why we're doing it. I'm confident. I'm partly confident that most of them won't even do anything about it, because that's another thing is, you can build things, and and a lot of people worry about, somebody's going to copy me. Well, maybe they will, but most likely they won't.
Mm.
You just have to be confident that what you built is good and that you're able to sell it. So that kind of got me. One of the things when I first joined Microsoft, there was, a Microsoft person chasing me down for a while, because we were new and we were actually moving some products that they were learning to get off the stage as new cloud CRM for them. Most of their partners didn't want to touch it because they were all on premise. We came from Salesforce, we were all over it, so we started selling it and got on the radar quickly. And one of the things he told me the first time I met him, which I thought was kind of arrogant at the time, was to spend as much time marketing myself internally to Microsoft as I do externally to customers.
Mm.
And I thought that was kind of an arrogant thing, but I thought about it and I thought, well, can't hurt. So I started asking for introductions to people, who I thought could help me. Again, wasn't worried about the community, just worried about myself.
Mm.
Who could help me accomplish my goals at Microsoft, and kiss a lot of frogs in that process. And one of the things a lot of Microsoft people won't tell you is that they're absolutely no value to what you're trying to accomplish at all. That's what I want them to say. Don't tell me, yeah, that's interesting. I'll look into that and see what I can do. Don't tell me that. Just tell me you can't do a damn thing, and I'll move on and stop wasting your time and my time. But eventually, you kiss enough frogs, you start running into people that have some influence, and you start telling them what you think. If you're not an idiot, and you've got opinions, and I mean, I'm trying to build products on your platform, not as an employee who's being paid by the hour, but as an entrepreneur who's going to live or die financially by my success in doing so. So when I got an issue, it's a legitimate issue with the product. And started identifying things early on and getting on the radar of the Microsoft product teams and people that are building stuff. That, hey, he's right about this, and he's right about that. And started blogging about some of that stuff too at the time. So that's kind of how it started. So now, I guess I kind of have a reputation as a little bit of a troublemaker, but the products have been improved as a result of making trouble. And that's not just me, obviously. There's other people out there, yelling at Microsoft about challenges, but I've had a pretty good bit of success in getting them to react and respond. Um, so but again, wasn't for the good of the community. That's a side benefit. I did this for myself and my business, and I continue to do it for myself and my business. If the community benefits, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I was actually speaking with my girlfriend over lunch about that situation because it popped up in my mind, what you said on Griffin's podcast, that, you're not necessarily an employee of Microsoft, but, what you do is what they do is impacted by what you do, or it goes the other way. In the sense of, obviously, if they're making changes to their products and services, it's going to impact you. And I really like what you said, that you're not shy or afraid to say if they've done something that you or the majority of people don't like. And I genuinely love that. And on that, Steve, and we spoke about this a little bit before, but you have faced your fair share of backlash on that, and with the MVP reward being taken away from you on your ninth year, I believe, or
Yeah,
10th year. Yeah.
yeah.
So
I'm surprised
could
they
you
didn't take it away much sooner.
so could you give us a bit more insight on that, and if you have any regrets looking back?
You know, the way you become an MVP has evolved a little bit since I first got in the program. But even when I first got in the program, there were some steps and some requirements that you had to do. Uh, Again, I'm a selfish person. I like taking shortcuts, and I've been making these relationships, independently with some people at higher levels in Microsoft. So I applied for the MVP without really meeting any of the criteria. but I put in my application that here is my reference, and I referenced somebody fairly high up in the organization. And so I became an MVP. That's how I
Mm.
became an MVP. I literally cheated. I had no business. I mean, I didn't meet any of the criteria. I just kind of pointed at somebody that all the MVP people would be nervous about upsetting, and said, "This is my reference," and I got kind of put in.
Mm.
And one of the things, I think this is your first year MVP, right?
Yes, exactly.
So one of the things that has seemed to be true is it is more difficult to become an MVP than it is to stay one.
Mm.
You know, the bar is higher to let you in the club, but once you're in the club, you know, unless you absolutely just go dormant and don't do anything, you're likely to just stay in the club, you know,
Yeah.
until you stop. And when you see most MVPs that you know aren't renewed, you look back and yeah, they literally went, you know, dark, you know, about everything, just completely disappeared. So they got to make room for some new ones. Program has grown a lot since I got involved with it over that last 9 or 10 years. Many more MVPs than there were back in the day. But I really never should have been an MVP because at least by the definition, you know, the definition is, and I don't want to use the term disparagingly, but you know, you're expected to be a Microsoft fanboy.
Mm.
And I am a Microsoft fanboy, but I'm also ready to, you know, slap them if I need to, because again, I'm trying to make a living on your platform. I'm completely dependent on, you know, things you do to make my living, and if you're doing stupid stuff that's going to impact that, I'm going to speak up. And they never necessarily like that, especially when you do it in public, which, you know, their fault, right? I mean, I've got my channels. I reach out in my channel, say, hey, this is a problem somebody needs to fix. Nobody does anything. I'm going to go talk about it in public. I'm going to make it,
Mm.
I'm going to put pressure on them to fix something that needs to be fixed any way that I can. And I think they just had, after 9 years, had probably had enough of that pressure. You know, MVP program was valuable early on, and you'll find, you know, that over the next several years, you'll meet a lot of people, both fellow MVPs, people inside of Microsoft. You'll learn a lot more about the inner workings of what goes on and how things are. You'll gain access to people that can be very helpful to you inside of Microsoft through the distribution list and things like that, and getting answers and dealing directly with the product teams, which is very valuable. But once you've absorbed the value over, you know, the several years, you've kind of absorbed the value, then it becomes incremental.
Mm.
So to me, the most valuable time for an MVP is the first 3 to 5 years. You know, that's when you're really gaining a lot of information, knowledge, relationships. After that, it kind of gets a little incremental.
Mm.
So I wasn't concerned about losing it after 9 years. I wasn't. I mean, I kind of got the value out of it for myself, selfish as I am. The value that I needed and wanted. I have the relationships. I mean, I can still reach out to any of the people that I dealt with, either as an MVP or not. Um, and it does remove a little bit of a cloud, because there was always, even though getting renewed is easier than getting in the first place, there's still, you know, every year you got to fill out the form and check the boxes and do the stuff. So that's kind of in the back of people's heads. Um, you know, I was probably a little more careful with my public statements while I was an MVP, because you'd write something and then you go, you know,
Mm.
and maybe you think about it, and oftentimes I would maybe, you know, pull it back just a notch, um, but not all the time.
Mm.
So now I don't worry about that. I don't worry about any of those things. You know, I really just didn't fit what the program was looking for. I don't blame them. I mean, I would have kicked me out too. Frankly, I would have kicked me out much sooner than they did.
Yeah.
Uh, but I got out of what I needed. It was a good experience. I don't regret it, anything about it. But I also don't regret not being one anymore. I got what I
Yeah.
needed.
Right. Understood. And you said you're not surprised that you lost your status, but obviously after 9 or 10 years being in the program, were you surprised at all that it took so long for you for like were you questioning the timing of that decision because you've been doing that for so long, and I trust you've always been that way. So were you surprised at the timing, I guess is my question.
Not really. I had already kind of decided, as I said, I kind of got the value out of the program
Mm.
that there was for me. You know, the big squeeze of the sponge. I got that, and now it was like really trying to wring that sponge for a few more drops. So I wasn't getting the value out of it like I was before. So I had already decided that this was going to be my last year as an MVP, and I was
Okay.
not going to renew.
Hmm.
Um, But, so once I reached that decision, I think I started, not tempering the post as much. I started just, speaking my mind maybe a little more than I even had in the past. And I know that I'd always been kind of on the razor's edge with them anyway. So
Yeah.
it didn't take but a few posts out there after I'd made that decision for them to say, okay, that's time to, pull the plug on Steve. So,
Yeah.
in a way, I probably provoked it.
Yeah.
You know.
Understood.
And I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. There's definitely. I'm not a bitter. It seems like every year there's a couple of MVPs that don't get renewed for some reason that just go ballistic, and how Microsoft's a terrible company and the whole program is shit and everything. It's all bullshit, and they're just all hurt, butt hurt feelings or
Yeah.
something. But uh, yeah, no, I don't have any regrets about the program or them kicking me out of it. They did the right thing by doing so.
Understood. And I appreciate your insights on that, Steve. That's awesome. I mean, you mentioned quite a bit there about making connections with the Microsoft staff and predominantly the product team and how valuable that can be. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that, perhaps your experiences with it and some of that value you got out of it and how someone can network with Microsoft who is an MVP, kind of what channels are available to those people who might not know.
Yeah, I mean, I made most of the connections before I was an MVP. I mean, I did
Mm,
that quick and early.
mm,
So I was kind of already there when new people would come into the organization that eventually moved up. I was kind of already there. Uh, I'd say so. MVP didn't hurt, but it definitely you don't have to be an MVP to go make those kind of relationships. The first thing to understand, I think, about folks inside of Microsoft, particularly on the product team, is they want information.
mm.
Yeah. Sometimes on the outside, it seems like they're just not listening and doing whatever the hell they want and launching stuff out there. But these are a bunch of engineers, developers. Just like everybody else in our community, they're building stuff and they want feedback. They want feedback. They want it to be constructive. They want it to be real. They don't want it to be stupid. And so you need to be careful how you're approaching somebody. But generally, I've had people say, "How is it you're able to talk to Charles Lamanna?" Well, I tried to. And
Mm.
he said, "Okay. I mean, if you don't try to, if you sit back and assume that these people are sitting up, on some throne somewhere and would never possibly speak to you, then yeah, you're not going to talk to anybody. You need
Yeah.
to kind of go in with the assumption that, what, I've got valuable things to say. He's a guy who probably would benefit from hearing them. I'm not going in there, thinking, oh gosh, I hope this person will talk to me, and then fumbling all around with my words. I'm going in, as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing them a favor. Uh, you know, in my role as an advocate or a critic, I'm doing them a favor as an organization. So um, I've not had much trouble over the years reaching most anybody that I needed to or wanted to. That doesn't necessarily mean all of them have been as receptive. And one of the challenges with Microsoft, which I've mentioned in the past, is if you want to try and get something done uh, that's significant, it usually takes more than one person to do that. Even if you
Mm,
talk to Charles, yeah, Charles is the big guy, but he isn't the guy doing the work, right? He's the
mm,
one who can kind of point a direction to the troops and say, hey, let's go work on this. But then there's a whole bunch of other people in that line that have all got to be on board to make something happen, whatever that
mm.
is, whether that's for the platform or even something I'm selfishly just looking for myself, for my own business, some sort of marketing program or some angle of my own. It reminds me a lot of Christmas lights. You know, you get all these lights in, and you have to have all of them in before the string lights up.
Mm.
If one of them goes out, the whole string goes out. So
Yeah.
you have to get all the light bulbs plugged in for the string to light up. And just the moment you do that, one of them changes position. Boom, leaves, that bulb goes out, the whole string goes out. You have to go, so it's a continuous game of finding all the different people that could impact an outcome you're trying to accomplish, and make sure that you're staying on top of all those people and juggling. I'm working with folks right now on the ISV side around app source, and it's the same thing. It's first identifying who's the person who could impact this outcome I'm trying to accomplish. Who is it?
Mm.
Another trick that I've often used in the past was, if I know somebody at a higher level in the organization, but I know they're not the right person, a person down a level or two from them is the right person, but that person wants to be difficult to get a hold of, I'll reach out and say, hey, Charles said I should talk to you. If you can go to somebody and you happen to have any relationship with any of their people above them, you don't need to reach out to the person above and say, hey, make this person talk to me.
Mm.
But they're much more likely to be receptive if they think that their boss's boss, and that sort of stuff. At least give you the time on the phone. So
Yeah. No, I love that mindset. And I love what he said at the beginning when you said, don't put these people up on a pedestal, don't put them up on a throne, because then you're never going to get an opportunity to speak with them.
they put their pants on the same way as us. They get
Yeah.
up every morning, go to work, same thing. They're responsible for making some big decisions for their stuff. I'm responsible for making some big decisions for my stuff. You know, they're just people. They're just people,
Yeah.
and just like anybody else, they're people that are hungry for knowing that they're doing the right thing, and that it's working. So if you can demonstrate that you're a person that can give valid opinions that could be helpful to them or their product or their organization, they will pick up the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love, and I just have to say this, Steve, you seem like you, even if you don't do it kind of consciously, it seems like you have a set of principles that you don't just apply to software or the Power Platform, but you can apply to any business. So these are really, really, really helpful, especially for me and definitely for the people at home, I hope as well. I graduated not too long ago. I discovered the Power Platform when I was in my internship and kind of stumbled upon it. Built a few Canvas apps, connected them to SharePoint lists, and had a Power Automate flow bouncing data. And I was like, this is so cool. But as in university, I was very skeptical because people are doing all sorts. You've got people that you're studying with doing cyber, and people in traditional software development getting internships at Amazon, and there was a lot of self-comparison going on for me. And I really wanted to ask you this for my selfish reasons, but also for people at home, which I think can benefit from it, because I was skeptical and you have serious skin in the game. So you've been involved in kind of companies and businesses that kind of rely on another company. So, for example, Salesforce and then Microsoft as well for the Power Platform. So would you say that that's something that people should look to do? And I guess what I'm asking you, to put it very bluntly, is does the Power Platform have a future, and should people bank on it?
Yeah, good question. When we were with Salesforce, we were not an ISV. We were
Mm.
just an SI.
Mm.
As an SI, you can switch platforms pretty easily, right? I've got a skilled team of people here. We happen to be doing Salesforce, but we moved them over to Microsoft. It's not that difficult to move that. But when you start building products on top of a platform, you're kind of stuck.
Mm.
For good or bad, you're kind of stuck with that platform because, I talk to Salesforce ISVs occasionally who are thinking maybe they should, move to the Microsoft because their particular solution is better suited towards a Microsoft customer. And you're starting over, man. That's a lot of. These are different platforms. Basically,
Mm.
you're just coming with a blueprint, but you got to rebuild it all. It's a big thing to move platforms. Um, could we have built what we're building, out of pure code and not using anybody's platform? No, not practically. We would never be able to afford to do it. It would take them forever. So you kind of have to leverage a platform. We'll see the same thing with AI. I mean, it's like you wouldn't go create your own LLM
Mm.
as an entrepreneur. I mean, it's just not going to be done. So
Yeah.
you're kind of stuck if you're going to build building on platforms or building stuff that's not very powerful. Um, there's certainly good and bad with doing that. I mean, again, like we said, I'm kind of at the tail end of a dog that can decide at any time to flip that tail. We heard Satya talking recently about uh, business applications collapsing and AI taking over. And when you've built a business application that uses mostly traditional forms over data approach that Dynamics and all of them currently do,
Mm.
and you've got the leaders of those organizations, both him and Benioff, out there talking about this is all dead, it's all gone. Yeah, it makes you worry a little bit. Um, but I also think that I've seen so many of these cycles before
Mm.
with these folks talking, and when Benioff or Nadella are out there talking, they're talking to the stock market.
Mm.
They're basically talking to the stock market because that's their job in the organization is to grow the share price and talk to the stock market and get them excited and have them come in. And that's been an interesting little battle raging online lately here with those folks. But they're talking to the stock market. The reality is, look at how many organizations are still using on-premise systems today.
Mm.
I mean, we're what, over a decade, well over a decade into cloud, and there's still organizations, and that, I mean, that's the extreme. But the number of organizations that are want to be on the bleeding edge of technology is very small.
Mm.
We're all inside the bubble, so we like that bleeding edge, and we'd like to talk to customers about it. But customers are not in our bubble; they don't give a shit about the bleeding edge. They're doing whatever their business is, and technology is a necessary evil for them. They don't wake up every morning thinking, "Oh God, what new technology can I go pay somebody to deploy for my business?" It's not how their minds work at all. So the market is very slow um, to adopt.
Mm.
So we'll see. And AI is not obvious. As a customer right now, looking at what AI offers, there's some really cool things, but it is not obvious that if I were to take that leap today, my business will be better.
Mm.
Regardless of Benioff or Nadella talking about, improved performance of their customers, all this sort of stuff, customers are not, I don't think we get enough proof on the table from either of them yet. Uh, reference customers, and I know reference customers. I mean, it's a customer pretty much just loves being a reference customer and will say, "Oh yeah, this is awesome," and so almost say anything you want. So there needs to be more out there, more people using, more, you know, clear successes. I'm not saying they won't come. I got my opinions about, AI and particularly down the LLM path. I think there will be a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff now. I'm using it in development. I mean, there's some good things coming from the LLM branch. Um, the agents makes me a little nervous, right? I mean, you
Mm.
can't type the same prompt into any LLM and get the same answer twice.
Mm.
With the exact same prompt, you will get at one time one answer, another time a different answer. So that's not necessarily that either of the answers are wrong, but they're different.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, we all live in a world where, I put something on a forum, it's the same. It doesn't just
Mm.
randomly become something different. Machine learning was very, you know, uh, basically rules based is very reliable. You know exactly what that answer is going to be for this particular input. We're in this space now where we don't exactly know what that output is going to be, and you can rag it, and you can format it, and you can. Oop, it bounced out of the screen for some reason. uh, you could do all those sorts of things around it, but still, I mean, compared to just rules based, you can't compare. So,
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why it seemed to have bounced out of the screen. Maybe I need to
That's okay. We can edit this part out, Steve, if you like, if you want to
I'll
turn
just
it off
lean
and on it.
over.
Yeah, fair enough. No problem. Yeah, super interesting. And I love what you said about when people like Satya are talking, they're speaking with the stock market, and their jobs are very different to ours in the sense of, the type of person they're talking to is very different. So that's super interesting. You spoke about making your business better, and it struck a thought in me that I feel like people at home might benefit from. So you run a company, of course. What do you look for in a person that makes you decide to hire them and makes you decide not to hire them? What are kind of the red flags and some of the things that you are looking for within a person?
I'm not looking for someone who agrees with me,
Hmm.
about everything, which is a challenge. Sometimes finding people that are going to join an organization, they feel like the first thing I need to do is just adopt his mantra and agree with every single thing that he says. Well, you're kind of useless then. You provide no value. We've got different kinds of people that we need in the organization, so it would kind of depend on the role too. There's some areas where the design of all the Rapid Start apps came out of my head. I'm highly engaged in the look, the feel, what we will add to them, what we will not add to them, keeping, I have a very solid vision about what that app is supposed to do, and what it's supposed to solve and how it will solve it. So, yeah, I'm not very amenable to ideas that are different on that. But when it comes to the actual execution of those ideas, how we accomplish that goal, yeah, I'm definitely open to that. So, yeah, I'm not looking for wallflowers, but I'm not looking for people that are challenging just for the sake of challenge.
Yeah.
Uh, I see that too many times in people. I see that even on phone calls. You'll be on a call with customers, and there's a couple of colleagues on the call of yours with you, and that one colleague feels like he's got to just pipe up when it's not necessary. The conversation's fine, everything's covered. There was no reason for you to pipe up, other than to hear yourself be heard. And that to me is just kind of screaming, I need attention. And I
Mm.
don't have much time for that kind of personality either. So
Yeah. Fair
um,
enough.
I'm
No,
definitely not an expert, definitely not an expert hirer.
right.
Um, and like a lot of entrepreneurs, I've been slow to fire over the years at different points. Sometimes I'm more aggressive than others about, making sure the right people are here and the wrong people are not.
Right.
But, you also, there's a little bit of compassion in me, believe it or not. It's kind of hidden, but it's back there.
Yeah, yeah, no, I 100% believe you, and yeah, I was super interested in that because, um, I have a huge respect for people who are genuine in what they say, and I think every ounce of what you write and say is genuine, and I believe that that will apply to the culture of your company as well, which is I think the best way to be. A bit more of a personal question, and I think this just comes from my curiosity. Why do you live in Brazil?
So I married a Brazilian in the U.S.
Okay.
3 years ago. Um, my third marriage, but the third time's a charm.
Yep.
And she wanted to move back to Brazil. And I've got a business. I'm fortunate, like many of us in our industry. I have a business I can run from anywhere. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter where I'm physically located. Right now, I'm on the side of a mountain in Brazil, 2 hours east of Sao Paulo.
Wow.
But before for a while, I was on a lake in Tennessee, and before that, I was in Florida, but doing the same thing every day, so it didn't really matter. It might matter if I was going to move to the opposite side of the world from a time zone standpoint for the majority of customers, but I didn't. Um, my kids are grown; they're on their own. So I'm not really needed for any of that. So I couldn't come up with a good excuse not to move to Brazil.
Mm.
I've lived in the U.S. my whole life, so it's time to. It's one thing to go vacation somewhere. You kind of hit the tourist spots, but it's another thing to actually go live there and change cultures completely.
Mm.
Um, and I thought, why not? I couldn't come up with a reason not to. So we've been here for about 2 years now. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's all that great, but it's completely different than what I've lived my whole life. So I'm loving the different,
Mm.
everything that's different about it.
Yeah. And what is different about it? Like, this is purely for my curiosity. If people aren't interested, feel free to dial out. But I'm gonna press Steve about Brazil for a few minutes. So what's different about Brazil to the US from living there?
So you're in the U.S. now yourself?
No. I'm in the UK.
You're in the UK. Have you,
Yes.
so it'd probably be the same as UK to the US. I think there's quite a few differences there. Maybe a little bit more because we're, this South America, but uh, too many things really.
Mm.
Brazil is not what you'd call a first world nation like the US and some of the other, but it's not third world either, right?
Mm.
There's a lot of areas where they're much more advanced technologically than others, which was surprising.
Mm.
Everybody here can transfer money to anyone else here for for no cost, no charge at all, just to move money through the banking systems. And it just seems you can't do that anywhere else without paying somebody a fee. But
Mm.
here, there's no cost. They're very protective here of their labor market.
Mm.
So, for example, there's no such thing as self-service gas stations. I mean,
Okay.
in the U.S., there's no such thing as anything else, right? Everything's self-service gas. You pull up, pump your own gas.
Mm.
But in Brazil, you pull up to a gas station, and there's 8 people standing out there waiting, and they come out and pump your gas. They don't do any more than that. It's not like when I was a kid. They'd come out and wash your windows, check your tires, do all sorts of stuff. No, they'd literally just come over and pump the gas, something I could easily do and have done myself thousands of times. But it's not allowed because if they did that, all those 8 people wouldn't have a job.
Mm.
So I think they'd rather have you working in a job that doesn't need to be done than sitting at home or sitting on some sort of unemployment. So that's an interesting thing.
Mm.
There's no tipping in Brazil, yet the wait staff in restaurants are friendlier than I've ever seen anywhere else,
Wow.
which is kind of ironic. You would
Yeah.
think in places where being nice, could influence their tip, they would be better, but no, completely different here. It's just not even part of the equation. Um, Driving is scary sometimes. uh, Police don't pull anybody over for speeding or stuff like that. Instead, they rely on speed cameras and speed bumps,
Mm.
which are all over the place.
All right.
So the whole country is drag racing from speed bump to speed bump. But in between those speed bumps, it's a little crazy. The motorcycles are completely nuts. The motorcycles just go anywhere they want, any time. Big motorcycle economy here with deliveries, food. That's another thing that's probably better than we had in the U.S. I mean, there's companies here that service all kinds of different restaurants, and you order something online, and it's delivered to you within about 30 minutes on a motorcycle. It skipped right through all the traffic and everything else, and to get food delivered that's actually hot
Mm.
is kind of a new thing. So
Yeah.
a lot of different things, but
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy it. People are great. People are
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
though, until they get behind the wheel. When they get behind the wheel, all bets are off. I'm going to get to that speed bump before you do.
Almost like a death match, a free for all. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Do you not get lonely because of the language difference, the culture gap, and the only reason I ask is because my partner moved from Portugal to the UK, and obviously, there's a few differences in culture and a few struggles that come with that. So, is that something you think about? Is it a problem for you? Do you not really care?
I wouldn't say lonely so much as frustrated sometimes because I
Mm.
don't speak Portuguese. I mean, I'm learning a few words here or there. I can get my way around usually between some hand signals and a few broken words to accomplish the basic stuff I need to do.
Yeah.
But obviously my wife's from here, and she speaks pretty good English.
Mm.
Good enough that we understand each other. I think we've made up our own language that is kind of a mishmash between, where she would say the wrong word for something, but I understood it, so I didn't correct it. Now it's
Mm.
become part of our language. So the interesting thing now is no one else can understand either of us because we've got this kind of hybrid language that
Love that.
we've developed. But yeah, I mean, obviously I need to to become more proficient at Portuguese. We're doing a lot of construction here, renovating this house. We're doing some other things. There's contractors are coming in, and I'm pretty dependent on my wife for those conversations, and most of the time she translates what I've said. Sometimes I'll hear where she's made a change, something I actually recognize, like a color or something.
Yeah.
I say blue, and she tells them vermilia, which I know that's red.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, like, I don't know about you, but when I go to Portugal, I get frustrated sometimes when the people don't think I'm Portuguese. I think that's an ego thing. I'm like, why don't
Yeah.
they think I'm like, they'll come to me and they'll immediately speak English. I'm like, why don't they think I'm Portuguese? Why do they just think I'm a stupid tourist? And my girlfriend's like, calm down, you are a stupid tourist. And I'm like, okay. So she definitely puts me back. But yeah, I'm just super curious about those cultural differences, and living in different places, and it probably appeals to some of our audience, if not all, because like you said, our jobs and our roles gives us that flexibility. So I thought I'd pry a little bit. So thank you for getting personal with me, Steve, on that. And I don't have any more questions. So at the end of the show, I always like to roll out the red carpet. Where can the people find you? What are you up to? And any links to what you mentioned will be in the description.
Uh, you know, uh, apps.rapidstart.com is where they can find our apps. We recently recreated the test drive experience that Microsoft used to offer through App Source, but discontinued. And
Hmm.
so people can go and test drive our apps within minutes for free. They don't need any credentials. They don't need any light. They don't need anything. They can get their hands on it, because that was very important when we had it before in App Source, for people to actually see what it is before they have to go down a path and make a decision.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me today. I haven't been doing as much blogging as I had in the past. I've been kind of just keeping it all on LinkedIn, just fewer places to deal with. Uh, Twitter's kind of turned into not so much a business-oriented platform, so I don't do much over there but lurk and listen.
Hmm.
So LinkedIn would be probably the best spot for people to be able to connect with me if they want to.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Steve. And thank you for everyone back home tuning into this episode. This has been Steve from Rapid Start Global, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adi.
My pleasure.